Makrinaos appeals to me as a whole due to its bizarre exploration traits. Compared to most Arcane Odyssey adventure islands, it has the most secrets of any War Sea island. A secret is Arcane Odyssey's environmental storytelling. It gives us an insight into the game's lore, and it is an important task for obtaining the Explorer titles. Makrinaos' appeal to me? Why so many secrets? What's the island hiding from me? Makrinaos also contains its own custom armor set, which you can only obtain by opening chests in this island, which was an experimental feature that the lead developer was cooking up. As of this update, Makrinaos is the only island with this feature. But what's even more unique about this island? The island is constantly protected by a magical barrier that constantly shrouds the island inside a permanently raging storm of equal caliber to that of the Dark Sea. Other than the excruciatingly stressful lag spike you receive when you enter the storm, it is not actually a big threat to you. The water is manageable, and the nearby tornado is just a tourist attraction for players looking to study astrophysics. However, when you try to decipher the lore of the game, it is a big deal. Oh no! I'm a story guy. My boat is weak because I hired an artificial intelligence to be my personal navigator.
Sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
Shut up, Clanker! Yeah, I know islands are a lame-o topic, but just please hear me out when I say, do not disturb the chef while he is cooking! Welcome to Makrinaos. This is the only island in all of Arcane Odyssey with its own built-in money laundering scheme. Think about it! There are criminals, but where are the houses? Do not tell me that all of these criminals sleep in these tents. And why would the criminals even set up a business here? Wouldn't the storms make it harder for trader ships to come in? Also, how did Ben Castillo get here? Where's your boat? Michael Jordan! Yeah, if I'd give this island an environmental sustainability rating, it would be 3 stars out of 5. I gave it 3 stars because it has elevators, and elevators are really cool. But I had to deduct 2 stars because I have reason to suspect that the residents in this island hate me. I cannot walk 2 centimeters without a computer clanker trying to kill me. I know I'm beautiful, but can you please respect the privacy of my asshole? The only NPC here who isn't a borderline psychopath is Cynthia, who resides on the mountain as a hermit, based on the fact that she speaks as an old wise grandma, but also not having any wrinkles on her face. We can assume that Cynthia is a Korean. In the Arcane Odyssey universe, a mage is a person blessed by the gods with the power of magic, greatly extending their physical powers in life. We can assume Cynthia is a mage because she hasn't aged a day, and also is a Korean. But why reside in Makrinaos, an island inhabited by Arcane Odyssey's cruelest scum? She said her heart belongs elsewhere. Where? Anyway, she has absolutely nothing to do with cadavers and skulls, so I'll just place Cynthia's existence in a dusty library behind my brain because I haven't even gotten to Makrinaos' coolest function yet. When I got here, I didn't even know that there was a Syndicate base here because the Assassin's Syndicate base in Makrinaos is really well hidden. It's like Arcane Odyssey island builders compete with each other on who can build the most hidden Assassin's Syndicate base. See, the function is, because Makrinaos is facing Samaria, it's obvious that players would sail to Makrinaos southbound, so the Assassin's Syndicate manages to hide itself on the front while blatantly plonking down windows at the back and side. This feat of building actually confused me when I got here for the first time. The dead hull should have an entrance at the back, which grants you free access via elevator. The guards will not attack you here if you have a bounty. For all of you guests, the Assassin's Syndicate is the evil version of the Grand Navy. While the Grand Navy patrols looking to end piracy, the Assassin's Syndicate looks to promote it. There's only one Syndicate and Navy base in every Arcane Odyssey sea, with Makrinaos being the go-to hideout for the Nimbus Sea. Here, players are allowed to join the Syndicate, and other than that, they have a storage room that also houses porta potties. They have a guy people assassinate because they want his clothes. They have Arcane Odyssey's first official faction pub. You cannot order alcohol here. Thanks, Roblox. Shivers, probably the second chillest guy in this hideout behind me, cause I'm cold. Get it? He tells us about the history of the Dead Halls. The Dead Halls were founded 20 years before the main storyline takes place, dug out by workers employed by the Assassin Syndicate to house a new hideout, which was deemed perfect in the eyes of the architects because, you know, cliff windows. But the architects didn't know that they accidentally stumbled across a Cindy Goth W. The miners who worked on hollowing out the Dead Halls accidentally busted open an ancient catacomb and... wait! Shivers, no! Come on! I thought you were the go-to guy for gossip! No, stop spoiling the secret! You have a good one. Oh, this video's ruined. What tells us is that there's no distinguishable founders who created the ruins since the ruins were made so long ago. But I have a theory. See, from my perspective, I think the catacombs were founded by skeletons. If you observe the layout of the ruins in Makrinaos, it's wear and tear, and of course its name, Makrinaos, being the Greek word for far away, and also being Greek, we can assume that the Makrinaos ruins were founded during the Greek period somewhere 800 to 400 years before Christ. Assuming that the main story takes place in the 1850s, Makrinaos is dated to be around 2,500 years. This is not canon, by the way, it's just my autisming. And on top of that, if we source the Arcane Chronicles book written by Randall, the Growth Curse user, the battle between the two curse users, Acheron and Theos, caused the earth to split and water to rise, which is kinda why the entire Arcane world is covered with water. Makrinaos is topographically the summit of a tall mountain, which is where most Greek temples are placed. If we use this logic, and also our eyes, Makrinaos is a faraway temple protected by a storm. It's almost like the island is sinister and wants to keep us out. Best thing to do is to explore further and see why the island is so evil. If I'm going to play archaeologist. So the bottom of the temple is seen as a main area. This is probably where the main religious ceremonies took place. Acolytes would sleep, pray, and eat here, and visitors would come and pay tribute to their god. To the east of the island is a walkway that takes us to the upper parts of the cliff. The walkway leads to a stone bridge that has unfortunately collapsed due to age, so players have to take an elevator that has been constructed by the Syndicate to get to the upper part of Makrinaos. The upper island features a single monument referencing Greek mythology. Here is where believers would supposedly deliver gifts to the god. But there seems to be no evidence of a statue, which is very bizarre, because statues are common in ancient Greek religion and are always seen in temples. Vatex is no fool when it comes to hiding subtle lore in statues, so why aren't there any statues here? One reason: the statues do not exist because the development builders who helped make Makrinaos were morons. Or perhaps the statues were forcibly removed by the original inhabitants. Perhaps something more sinister is at play. Because right to the northwest of the upper island there's a tiny temple just subtly hidden from the ancient religious society. Now this temple is the only building not connected by a path. The inside of the temple is lined with walls of the deceased, dead followers of the religion whose final wish was to be buried close to the gods that they worshipped. Here, the acolytes would pay respect to their deceased elders by bearing gifts sealed in chests that the player would steal when exploring the underground. But the player isn't the only individual who explored these catacombs, as by breaking open a secret wall, the player finds the deceased remains of Charles Vassi, a Thorn Empire explorer who experienced a cave-in while navigating through the catacombs. which is an actual risk to look out for in real-world catacombs. Charles would find himself trapped in a cave alongside the riches he desperately sought after, doomed to spend his last few days alive, ever regretting leaving the Chimera Sea. Given that his body has deteriorated but his bag hasn't, the cadaver has been here for about, say, 5 to 50 years. The Chimera Sea is a sea that hasn't been added yet. It is home to the Thorn and Rugen dynasty. Arcane Odyssey is designed to have 6 different seas, with 3 designated storyline bosses. According to the dialogue that a Syndicate acolyte tells you, the 2 dynasties in the Chimera Sea are not happy with each other and wants each other dead. So, I guess we have that to look forward to in the main story. In ancient Greece, funeral rites were commonplace. The Greeks believed that after a person's passing, they are required to pay tribute to Charon, the ferryman of the afterlife, in order to help them cross the river Styx safely, the passage between life and death. So this is where Makrinaos' most sinister chamber comes to play, a ritual hall. From my observations, designed to help acolytes with passing on to the afterlife safely. When an acolyte would pass away from illness or old age, their corpse would be taken to the ritual chamber for their funeral rite. The priest would plunge a ritual dagger into the corpse's heart, and their blood would siphon through the grate in the middle of the chamber. Now, something like this is commonplace in ancient culture. Ancient Egyptian kings would have their brains melted out of their noses, Mayan peasants would have their hearts torn out and offered to the sun, and Vikings would turn people's lungs into wings. It's all part of how things worked back then. But what deeply disturbs me about this chamber is how well maintained it is. Other than the bricks being scattered around the ritual hall, the place is surprisingly intact compared to the ancient structures overhead with its cobwebs. There is also a singular lit candle, which is very distressing, because the maximum time a candle can be lit for is 3 days. But since this is Arcane Odyssey, I'm just going to assume it's a magical candle and can last indefinitely. But this means that people are still coming to this chamber, and I am not sure they are here to do funeral rites. I think they're here to sacrifice. And if I'm going to suspect a group of radicals who continue this tradition, it is going to be either the Assassin Syndicate faction, or whatever the cult is that displays their banners so proudly over the ritual hall. Note that the banner is intact and clean. You may think that it's the Greenwich cult that is behind this, but their banner is vastly different from this banner, and I would assume that they aren't the types to follow Greek culture. And then there's the Assassin Syndicate. They are by far one of the evilest factions in the War Seas. But the Assassin Syndicate is not truly obsessed with power and mythology. They are a faction who would do anything if it means turning a profit. And profits do not mean unnecessary sacrifices. So, who did the sacrificing? Why drop blood into a grate? And where does the blood go? The only way to answer these questions is if I go down to the mysterious hole in which the grate covers. Welcome to the Abyss of Charon, the deepest part of Makrinaos. This chamber is high in magic energy, as seen from the wisps of energy that rise. This is a common phenomenon that happens when a player is in a magic-dense area, such as the Myriad or in the Dark Sea. This magic energy is called chaos, and is the force that enables mages to cast magic. From its design, the Abyss of Charon seems to be an ancient Greek temple, but in contrast to how Greek temples are constructed up high to reach the heavens, this temple is constructed very low in the ground to reach the underworld. As the Iliad claims, after the 10-year war with the Titans, Hades and his 2 brothers, Poseidon and Zeus, drew lots for realms to rule. Zeus received the sky, Poseidon received the seas, and Hades received the underworld. So, if any temple would be built underground, it would be to worship Hades. The Abyss of Charon is scattered with statues, some wielding bidents, which was a signature weapon of Hades. The reason why it's called the Abyss of Charon is yet to be explained, but In my observation, the Abyss of Charon acts as a gateway between life and death, a residence for souls who are unable to move on, cursed for eternity. It acts as Arcane Odyssey's variant of the river Styx, which can explain what the corrosive pools of liquid on the floor are. And as it is the river Styx, the chamber is scattered with ghosts. Players are able to converse with the ghost, and thanks to this, I get to learn more about the ritual chamber. The cult who had been maintaining this chamber calls themselves the Seekers of Sight, religious fanatics who go to inhumane lengths to acquire what they call sight, which may be the concept of chaos. Magic. A ghost named Landon tells me his story of how he was forcefully kidnapped by the Seekers of Sight and consequently sacrificed at the ritual. The priest plunged a dagger into the back of his neck, and Landon woke up here. And thanks to Landon, I have a theory. Assuming that only blood could make it past the grate in the ritual chamber, and that canonically, Warsea humans have trace amount of spirit power and magic in their blood, the reason why humans become ghosts is because of the remnants from their spirit power that is unable to dissipate. This may be due to perishing in an area with high magic energy, which explains why there are ghosts in the Dark Sea and in Icarius' Keep. As time goes on, these ghosts will slowly lose their memory and sense of function, because all that they are remnants of a person's spirit energy. Without the person, a ghost is just spirit energy, and with only the memories of the strongest emotion lasting the longest. And a fun addition, according to Greek mythology, anyone who touches the water in the river Styx loses their memories. But the Abyss of Charon water may just be from the high magic density. There are similar pools found in the Dark Sea. One part of the chamber leads us to a river of what I from now on am going to call Styx water. The Styx water takes us to a room with a hole that your player wishes not to enter due to overwhelming fear. The room also houses coffins, and a ghost who you can talk to, who tells you to stay away from the hole. This mysterious hole has played a huge mystery among Arcane Odyssey lore fans, constantly debating with each other on what actually exists down below. But joke's on them, I actually know what is down the hole. Jeff the Killer! Being a fake rumor that was spread on Arcane Odyssey forums. I mean, think about it. This is the Abyss of Charon. There is a river Styx. And what's below the river Styx? The domain of Hades, ladies and gentlemen. I have found Arcane Odyssey's second hell. That is in the Dark Sea. Passing through a door, we locate a room with a mysterious banner. No one currently knows what the banner means. But if I would explain my assumption to its origin, given its bident shape, the weapon of Hades, the symbol is tied to Hades. The ghost in the room was originally a priest for the Seekers of Sight, being in charge of sacrificing victims for the king's desire, who was the leader of the Seekers of Sight. Now, if I would assume that the skeleton in the room was the priest, after a life of mercilessly sacrificing innocent individuals for a cause he perceived to be good, the priest stabbed himself with a dagger out of sheer anger for the fool he was, upon learning that the king of the Seekers of Sight was actually doing all this to appease Hades, the god of the underworld. The ghost is unable to tell us more, indicating that it has been here for thousands of years, with only its hatred for the king remaining intact, emphasizing its emotional distress from the betrayal. And this can only mean one thing. The Seekers of Sight was a cult, with many of its followers being groomed into committing these atrocities by the king. This part has not been written down in any Wikipedia or answered by any developers. This is just a speculation from what I've piled together. This mysterious king was a cult leader, a cruel man obsessed with power. Many years ago, he founded the Seekers of Sight to help him with his life goal: to strike a deal with a god in order to gain immense power. In Arcane Odyssey's story, the player strikes a deal with the god of the sea, Poseidon, in order to get his awakening. I speculate that the unnamed king must have been trying to do the same thing. Now, I assume this because if we go through a cave dug out by the escaping former members of the Seekers of Sight, we enter the final and most notable secret area for the Abyss of Charon, with the remains of what seems to be the king enshrouded by an aura of death. The room is large in scale and houses a pedestal for the god of death, with golden chests piled at the statue's feet, obvious tributes from the king trying to appease the god in order to obtain mythical power, alongside the sacrifices of thousands. But while the player earned their awakening through being the epitome of morally good, the unnamed king was selfish and evil. He sailed across the ocean with his followers under the guise of seeking the site, and when he found the temple to Hades, he did not hesitate to genocide the original carers of the temple. Reluctant to show his followers his true objective, he would destroy all evidence that links the island to Hades, which explains why the temples have no statues. The king believed that in order to appeal to Hades, he had to sacrifice human lives. So, his followers would kidnap and sacrifice innocent civilians under the guise of the site. In contrast to the original inhabitants of Makrinaos, who committed their funeral rites after death, the Seekers of Sight would openly sacrifice people at the altar, which angered Hades because murder is the highest form of cruelty a human can commit to another. Some of his followers, upset at the atrocities that the king was ordering them to commit, they would try to escape. They would dig a tunnel out of Makrinaos, but in a twisted sense of fate, they ended up seeing something they were not allowed to see. These escapees were then sacrificed. According to the Iliad, Hades was actually a kind god, although commonly misunderstood as a cruel god for his association with death and the underworld. Hades was actually stoic and reasonable, with a strong sense of justice, and was willing to punish anyone who would violate the laws of the underworld. Hades, seeing how the unnamed king has violated his reputation, his followers, and his legacy, decided to punish the unnamed king in a proportion equal to the crimes against humanity that he had committed. He called the cruel king to his chamber. "You want my power? Take all of my power." In a fit of pure rage, Hades flowed all of his wrath and hatred into the unsuspecting king. The power of a god being unfit for a mortal placed the king into a permanently catatonic state, doomed to spend the rest of his life suffering from the power he had killed so many people to obtain. The king lays there to this very day, suffering from the worst visions and nightmares you could curse upon a human, haunted by the ghosts of his victims, unaging from a sinister power from a merciless god. Anyone who enters the hall will feel a fraction of the indescribable agony that the king is enduring, paying for his crimes for centuries. Eons. But all that said, it's just a speculation from what I've seen. Perhaps the king may have founded the island himself. Perhaps Hades may have liked the unjust murder of innocent people. Then again, this is all just a theory in my head. It's non-canonical, but this may give us wonderful insights into Arcane Odyssey's main story. The potential that Morden, the Death Curse user, unlocking his awakening at Makrinaos, meeting the very god of the power that he possesses, learning about his gift. Or perhaps you, yourself, receiving your second awakening here, which is very unlikely given that the Nimbus Sea itself is named Nimbus after the giant kingdom in the sky, which obviously means that the Nimbus Sea is dedicating itself to Zeus. But why question myself? After all, I could have just made a video talking about magic.